We're going to focus on request approvals. So we've kind of created a baseline with the stuff that we've talked about in the last few sessions in terms of the automated user lifecycle management. Today, we're going to focus on request approvals, workflows, and things like that. Okay. This topic is going to get broken out into a few parts, and our goal is really to show how we can kind of we can basically structure our catalog and how items are added into that catalog, right? Way it's going to get broken down is going to look at the catalog structure, then we'll look at how we can add applications into that catalog, and then how we can define workflows and related notifications. And at the end, we'll just kind of go through a flow to kind of show what the end user experience is like, right? So at each step of this, we'll be kind of talking about, um, how that topic works, and then we will go into how to actually do it, right? Of all the topics we've done so far, I think this one should be relatively easy from a technical perspective, right? So just a little bit of background for folks who are a little bit newer to this. Um, we've kind of talked about when we did the automated youth lifecycle management, we talked about the birthright access rules. So those types of entitlements are given automatically based on some criteria. So it's like the least amount of access that you need to be able to perform your job. And we can do this in a consistent way safely across each user, right? There's additional access that you may need, which is kind of on demand or um, that may not apply as consistently, right? And this is done through basically requesting access. Companies which haven't deployed IAM solutions may be using their help desk system or an ITSM system to create these requests. And the requests can vary. They can vary from I need a group membership into AD to access to a shared folder to um, hey, my laptop is dying. I need a new laptop, right? And all of those are types of requests, and conceivably they can all be represented in your IAM system as well. Um, Yes, it's not in a presentation mode because it's preventing me from seeing the chat messages which are coming as well, so I apologize for that. It's causing a little bit of a nuisance in being able to answer questions which are being posted at the same time. Okay. Um, when we upload the video, we'll try to clean it up and kind of have a little bit better structure there, right? So sorry about presenting it out this way. So the idea here is that we want to take all of your the access requests, right? Especially those which are related to what a particular account can do to kind of have them centralized within your IAM system. And and companies also do this when they have difficulty describing, business rules or birthright access or any kind of a consistent RBAC model. We had one customer where they had about 45,000 employees and they had a huge number of, I believe they were using Oracle EPS and they had probably 3 times as many responsibilities as they had people. They weren't able to define a proper, RBAC model. So in their world, they decided that the easiest way for them was to make everything go through a request approval option, right? So, you know, was there room for improvement? Yes, there was, but this allowed them to at least, have control and go through their compliance needs. Let's, the first thing is we need to do when we do this is to kind of set up a structure, right? And this is not something that OpenIAM is going to dictate. This is how you want to organize your service catalog. So meaning you know, how will people find the various types of applications? So if you only have a few applications, and this isn't very hard, right? You can, but there are companies which have 800-900 applications across the entire, enterprise. So letting someone have a free reign over how to search for it is just kind of chaotic, right? So this will help to kind of, create some kind of structure. So we do this using categories. categories in OpenIAM are just another type of resource. And again, the reason why we did it was because we can control access to who's entitled to a specific category or not, right? And this way, we don't have to open up the entire, catalog structure. The way we do this is we, in the admin console, we go into access control, we create a resource, and we just create a new resource. Now, these categories can be hierarchical, so it doesn't have to be a flat structure, right? So let's go into our application, our demo environment, and so I'm already logged into the admin console, and so actually let's go to the self-service portal first, right? So when I come here to say create a request, request for myself, it's going to say select from a catalog or a template, and I'll explain this a little bit more in detail afterwards. But let's say go to catalog, and the first thing I'm going to see are my categories, right? So this is the way that the service catalog has been kind of set up. So if I click on some of them, like business apps, it will create subcategories, right? So this is a hierarchical, reference here. So now let's say we want to create our own category and a child category, right? It's just we'll keep this in mind because we're going to come back to this and we're going to see new categories being added. So let's go back to Web Console. And so first things first, let's go to resource. And if we filter by application category, you'll see all the categories that we have over here, right? These are the same ones that we saw on the other side. So for example, if I open up directories, I'll see the word directory and then the localization in different, places. We need to make sure that the is visible flag is on, otherwise you will not see it. Okay. So let's go ahead and create a new resource or a new category. And so I'm going to tell it what kind of resource I want, which is an application category. And let's just say, new top level category. And we're just going to say, right, I'm going to go ahead and, yep, these are all fine. And I'm going to say save. And I should see that in a few seconds. Now, since this is a resource that has all the normal, trappings of a resource, right? And let's see. Now, if I create another, let's just create another resource, again. And again, this is also going to be an application category. And I want to say that, again, these are not names that you would normally pick. You don't want to pick something that's a little bit more user-friendly. But again, this is just for demo purposes, right? And I'm going to say this is all fine. And I'm going to say, go ahead and save. And then for this one, let me just see if I need to do this here or. So I'm going to go back to the category I created earlier. And I'm going to create the association with the child category. So this is the top level category that we created. And if I say go to entitlements, and it's going to say child resources, I'm going to add. And again, I'm going to filter by category. And I'm going to say child. So at this point, I've created an association between these two. And if I go back to my self-service application, and let's say I come back into this, if I did everything correctly, we should see. Okay, I think it may take a second. I think there's a cache that needs to refresh, and we'll come back to this in a second. So anyway, we'll continue with this while it's going through. So if I look at some of the other ones that we have, so for example, if I were to go back and look at, let's say the ERP category, right? Actually, let's pick business apps because this one had the child categories associated with it. And if I were to go to entitlements, you'll see the two child categories that we have, right? So, um, okay. So while the cache is refreshing, we'll check it in another minute or so. I think if I remember correctly, I think the cache refreshes every 5 minutes, so it may not have been enough time. Yeah, we'll give it a little bit more time. Okay, so in the meantime, let's work with the categories that we have. And so we have a number of applications here. So under business apps, right? So if we wanted to add another application to it, so we again go back to our web console. Now, these things you can do also in bulk. So if you're loading an application or need to upload a collection of applications, you can use a CSV file to be able to upload these. Okay, so let's go into provisioning and we go to manage system. So managed systems were the applications that we had, and then we had manual and automated, right? So let's say if we were to, let's find one which is, okay, let's just take this one, AD cloned, for example. And if I, okay, I think there's a question. Um, okay, this question is, can you show if it's possible how to create categories and child categories that contain members of the same managed system? For example, application A, which is granted to 380 groups, application B, which is granted to 280 groups, and the groups are in the same managed system. Okay, I think if I understand correctly, the use case is something like this, where um, maybe you have applications performing, like say, AD authentication or AD authorization using the group memberships, right? And then you want to be able to show how those applications can be configured in the catalog so that we have user-friendly names, but they would kind of wrap around multiple AD group memberships. Is that kind of what you're trying to achieve? Okay. Um, Let me see if I can figure out how to do that. If I don't remember how to do that on this call, I will definitely cover that on the next call. It's a question that comes up a lot. Um, so question is, I said, I think you have set the resources active for it to load in self-service. So let's see if I did do that. You're right that I do need to make it active. So let's go to my top level resource. Okay, so this is visible, this is public, so this should be okay on the category side. And the managed system, let's just pick one of these, go back to our AD cloned. So yes, this part needs to be active for sure. And then the next thing is the category that we pick, right? So these categories are mapped to, whatever what the catalog structure is, right? So for example, am I seeing, no, I'm still not seeing the categories that we created. So if I come here, and let's say if I want to change this to say ERP, for example. Okay, so comment is about field resource status. Are you referring to the application category? Or you're talking about the managed system that I'm looking at. Okay, so if I were to go back to my self-service, okay, I think you're referring, okay, let's go back to application category. So clearly I've done something wrong. Let's see, resources and I see what you're saying. I never marked it as active. Thank you very much. It's visible, it's a status. Thanks a lot. I overlooked the little drop down below. This is why none of them are coming up. So let me go fix both of these. And let's say we have our child category here as well. I need to fix that one as well. Okay. So with that being said, let's see if that solves my problem. Okay. This is the top level category for the webinar. And here is the child category, right? So that takes care of that. The next thing is let's create a manual managed system. So this isn't something that we've done so far. So everything that we've created so far has been based on the AD or the automated managed system. So let's create a manual application. So a manual managed system is one that doesn't have a connector to it. So there's some other fulfillment that may go on with it. So I'm going to just say, test application. Now here I'm going to mark it as active and manual. And now I'm going to pick my child category. And so at this point, we should see that application coming through over here. Right? So we see the application, and now I can go forward. Now, there are no entitlements for this application, so there's really nothing to be able to request, right? And so now if I wanted to create any entitlements, I need to associate them with this. Now, this is done to the managed systems, right? So when we look at, for example, our web console, I'm flipping back and forth. If we looked at, say, our group memberships, all of these AD groups that we have, if you were to open up one of them, they're linked to a managed system, right? So on that catalog, it will appear underneath that managed system. Okay. So from the entitlement perspective, we don't really need to do anything more. Right? So that's kind of how we onboard applications out. There is in here under provisioning and under synchronization, there should be a couple of so there's a predefined task on managed system sync example. This sync file has, so if you needed to load a number of applications in bulk, you can use this template to be able to fill it out, upload it, and create all of your applications and your resources, without having to do this manually. Right. So let's just preview this file. And so you'll see that it has basically all the fields, including the category structure, the permissions, who the owners are, and so on and so forth, all defined here. So you don't need to create this task yourself. You can leverage this out of the box, tasks that, to do this. Okay, so we've done that. Let's go back to our slides. Yes, one. Okay, so we did the category part. We've added applications to the category. What's left are how we define the approval flows. Now, there's two things to consider here. When we define the approval flows, we can define them either at the application or the resource level, or we can define them at the entitlement level. Generally, the recommendation that I tend to follow is you should define the approval flow at the application level and override it at the entitlement level. And the reason for that is that you may have literally tens of thousands of entitlements that you want to manage. If you have to go through each one of them and define them there, even if you bulk load them, it's an insane amount of work. So it's usually a lot easier to have the flow at an application level and then to be able to override it, right? Now, for that, there's a flag that you need to turn on because let's just go back to our managed system. And actually, let's go back into system configuration. And I go to workflow. And so in these workflow configurations, now down, there's a little checkbox here. It's kind of strangely worded. It says use approver association or role group instead of resource. It really should say use the approver association on the role or group instead of the resource. And what the workflow, and when this is turned on, what the workflow will do is it will look at the entitlements first. If it sees that there's a workflow definition there or an approval flow definition, it will take that. If you don't find it, if it doesn't find it there, it will then look at the parent and then it will process things at that level, right? So for our purposes, let's go ahead and save this. And then let's go and define our approval flow, right? And so we can go, so now this is a little bit disjointed. We defined the managed systems over here, right? So this, just remember we had our 80 cloned, managed system that we created that we assigned the category to. If to do the approval flow, we need to go to resource again. And on resource, we can filter by managed system, right? Or we could have used the manual managed system as well, right? And let's just take any one of these. Let's just say, test application. And you'll see fields for resource owner and admin. So this is, very commonly used. So for example, let's just say I want, a user and I want, Jack to be the resource owner, right? So, and alternatively, if I had picked a group, then when the approval workflows happen, they would go to the entire group. A notification will get sent. One person has to approve it from there, and or one person has to claim it first, and then they can approve. And the reason for that is that we don't want two people trying to approve at the same time, right? Once you define your owner and admin, if there is one, you may not have one. The next thing is to go to approver associations. Now, every single entitlement object, so groups, resources, and roles, all have this concept of an approver association. And in the approver association, we can define the approval steps. So in this case, it's going to the system admin. Now, let's say if I wanted to add another step, I can say the approver is the owner, the resource owner. right? And then I could define other parameters in terms of like who I want to notify on approval, who I want to notify on rejection. It's not, again, it's there if you want to define it. Also, if you want to send out reminders, you can say, maybe after 3 days, send out a reminder. And it will then add this onto the step, right? So this means that anybody who's asking for this resource test application should, the approval flow would go through system, it's the sysadmin, and then it'll go to the owner, and then after that, it will get fulfilled. With manual applications, there's a little twist. So if you don't have an ITSM system, then OpenIAM can act as the place where all approvals are done. So for example, let's say we had these two steps, and a third part is to send it over to like the help desk, and the help desk is going to go ahead and do their work. If we didn't have an ITSM system, then that person at the help desk, they would log into OpenIAM, and they would update the ticket to say it's complete when they've actually done the work, right? If you have an ITSM system like a ServiceNow or a Jira, you could send an email notification um, to a person or a group, and ServiceNow or Jira will take that email, parse it, and it will create a ticket out of it, and then they will do the work, right? With the last, since version 4.2.1.7, there is a light integration for ServiceNow, and it will use the ServiceNow API to be able to create a ticket in ServiceNow directly. So you don't need to send it an email message at that point. And that's largely because of the large number of people that who are using ServiceNow. So it simplifies the integration if you want to use the API level part. In 4.2.2, which we will release in late May or early June, there is a deeper integration with ServiceNow. And in that integration, after we use the API to be able to create a ticket, OpenIAM will store that ticket information, and it will periodically check with ServiceNow to see if that ticket has been approved or not, and it will reflect the status back. The reason for that is, one, we want to have a full integration, and the second part is to have one place where users can go to and see everything that they need to, as opposed to having to go half into ServiceNow, half into OpenIAM, and it just kind of creates a little bit of a mess. Okay. Next part, we've defined these approval flows. Sometimes people don't like to, they don't like to process these things, or maybe they're just busy, right? So we've set up reminders. You can see that it's going to send a reminder after 3 days, and in 3 more days, it's going to do an escalation, right? So let's define the escalation. So the escalation, maybe it can just be their personal supervisor. And, we're going to wait 2 days here, and I'm going to give them 1 day. And now we can add an entire chain of who want to, so basically this can go up into the food chain and, basically encourage that work is done on time, right? So this question is, we have ServiceNow as a request center and approval logic built in. Could ServiceNow trigger a grant request in OpenIAM? Yes. So this integration would go in a different way, right? So basically, if I understand correctly, you have ServiceNow where people are going to be creating the requests and all the approvals. And then after it, you want to be able to send a message into OpenIAM to be able to do the actual fulfillment. So all of the operations in OpenIAM are exposed as a REST API, including the user provisioning service. So your ServiceNow, workflow can call it can call the OpenIAM. It can call the user provisioning service, pass in the parameters like the user ID and the entitlements that it wants, and OpenIAM will then go ahead and use the connectors to be able to provision that. So absolutely, okay, you can do that. In light of that, so I think most of the customers we have, they kind of use OpenApp to do the workflow part, but there's a few who are doing it the way that you are. And to kind of support that use case a little bit better, the plan is in the fall, there will be a native ServiceNow module that will be, that will basically use the catalog information that's already in OpenIAM to render it inside ServiceNow as a native functionality because you already have all the entitlement information there. So that will again become another option. And that module will also have this closed loop capability where you can call the OpenApp service to do the actual provisioning, right? So we will be, with ServiceNow in particular, we will be building out that integration to give people a choice of how they want to do this integration, right? So, um, so far we've gone ahead and basically built our catalog and we've gone through the approval process, right? So let's see how this would actually work, right? So if we go back to our self-service, and I'm logged as an admin, and which is fine. So let me just go and find a random user that I want to use. Um, so let's just pick, actually, you know what? I'm going to use one of my own accounts because at least it's got my email and it's got better notification. So I came here, now I have a choice. I can request things from the service catalog or I can select rights from profile. The difference between these two, service catalog lets me request entitlement, specific entitlements. The select rights for the profile is like a template. It's like a bundle of rights that I can request at a time, right? The question is, will ServiceNow directly create tickets and how does it fill necessary information which is required in ServiceNow? So when we use the API forces that information, that process, right? The information that is needed, meaning, who's requesting it, what am I requesting, all those details, they're passed in as that API request. That information should already be in OpenAI, meaning, who is this request for, who is requesting it, maybe even who approved it, the entitlement that I'm asking for, maybe a description, any notes, all of that can be passed to the API. If you use the lighter integration, meaning sending a well-formatted email, then basically you need to make sure that the email that OpenIAM is sending is formatted in a way with the information that you need so that ServiceNow can basically parse it out and create that ticket. But it needs to go to a mailbox that ServiceNow is monitoring, right? And from what I understand, it's fairly easy to do because I think ServiceNow has tools, for this. So, and we've had a lot of customers over the years use that approach. Okay. So let's go back to our catalog. And now I'm going to go through, let's say, business apps. And let's say that I want an AWS account. And at this point, maybe I want these two, memberships, right? Now I've picked these and um, keep in mind, it's also depending on what use case, there is the option to have access rights. So remember I said earlier, like maybe like if you're like, say, you're using a banking application and this is, if this is access to maybe a loan system, there might be credit limit approvals that need to be set. So those could be shown here in the access rights and you could pick those before adding them to the cart, right? So here, let's say if I want this particular permission, I'm going to say that I want this only for 30 days, right? So if this was a more sensitive type of access, this can be used to kind of control how much time I ask for this. And the system will take away the access after this time is up, right? So now when this is done, it's going to go ahead and say submit, and it's going to start that workflow, okay? So question is, how do you fill in those access rights so that someone can pick them? So the access rights are another resource, Joe, and uh, those should be populated along with when we load the application, right? So if we're creating the managed system, you can define them at that time, but it can also be from the CSV file too. So depending on how many applications, you shouldn't do them manually, right? Um, and let me just go back to that in a second and see if I can show you where we could, define those. So I created that request, so I can go to view my requests, and I can see this was the request that I just created, and I can track this here to see who this is with. So unfortunately, I picked a bad one, which goes to me, and it auto approved. So um, let's log in as another user, and we can get a better idea, right? I think if I go. So the question is, there seems to be an issue when something auto approves, it isn't actually approved yet. Um, if you're seeing that in your environment, then let me know, because it shouldn't be the case. If it auto approves, it really should be auto approved, and it really should be going to the end step as you're provisioning. Yeah. Um, okay. So coming back to this, so let's just say, in this case, I'm picking another user who's got a number of requests. So the requests will show up in their inbox, and let's just go to the end. And these are position changes. This point one, which is an access request. Okay, so this was an access request. So I can view this and I can approve this directly from here. I can also go to email and I can approve. There is also a Teams plugin. So if you don't want people to come into OpenIAM to have to go do this, and you're using Microsoft Teams, you can approve these directly from Teams it's literally a single click, and it will pop up as it's a bot in Teams. There will be one later in the year for Slack as well. So I'm just going to open this up a little bit and we can see the approval flow. So this is with Jack. Next is going to go to the security manager. At this point, I can approve, I can reject, I can also delegate this to someone else if I want to. And I can also add comments in here if I need to. Right? So um, the delegation part of this, aside from what I can do manually, there's also an out of office. So if I want to, if I set the out of office, then it can basically reroute to whoever I delegate at that point, right? So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and approve, and it will go to the next step. Okay? And it will continue in that path. Also, with, let's just say, this is any one of these requests. Also, there's a visual view on a progress tracker, so you can see, who this is with, and can I have, a different representation of this, right? Um, how do we go about add a team spot? Let's connect afterwards on this one because there's a little bit of a process because it needs to go through the Azure, registry, and it needs to be exposed that way so that it will come up in your team spot. It's not as simple to get it there, but we can help you with getting it set up. But the once it's in place, it will make life easier. And the other part is besides being able to approve them, there's also some commands that you can run to give you all of your open, pending requests and things like that, and be able to process them all from within Teams. Yeah. Okay, so once we have our access requests done, it will go through the approvals. I'm not going to go through the security manager and do the same thing again. I think you get the point. The last thing that I want to show you is also about request administration. So let's see, this is exposed to me or not. Let me log in as the admin because I'll have full rights and we can. So under access management, no, sorry, under request approval, two things that may be of interest is request history. These are all of your requests. You know, um, and okay, yeah. So Joe, we'll set up. I'll reach out to you after this, and we'll set up a call, and we'll kind of work through the open questions. I think there's a few of them that we need to work through. Okay. And the question was, if you put more than one approver, yet only one is mandatory, why does the system still require the others to approve the request if the initial mandatory person already approved it? I'm not sure. I don't remember the history behind what that mandatory flag was. Um, I think there was a specific customer request around the use case. I'll have to find out what the rationale behind it was. In my view, if there's two approvers, um, that you need two approvals. I don't remember exactly what the rationale was for it, but there was a specific use case. And I think for most people, these steps should be mandatory, but I'll find out what the rationale was. Okay. So under request history, you you will find, so depending on the level of privileges that you have, you can see all the approvals, or you can see, your completed requests, right? And so this is a way of kind of going back and seeing what may have happened with a specific request. Like let's say, for example, um, so this was an access request that was completed, right? And you'll see, who approved it, the steps along the way, and again, it's just history, and you can report on this as well. The request administration is more about managing the requests which are kind of in flight at this point, right? So let's say for request type, so it doesn't like that one. All right. So let's say, for example, these are various workflows which I've got access requests, I've got access certifications. Let's say, for example, this was created by accident, for example, right? So I can cancel this out if I want to, right? I'll give me a reason why I want to do it, and it will log it in the audit logs. This was canceled. There might be times when there's a request which has been sent where the approver, they're not available, they're overloaded, whatever the reason is, I may need to delegate this out. And I can pick, right? I can pick someone else and I can assign it to them and let the workflow get rerouted to them, right? So this tool is largely about carrying out this administrative, tasks that you need, right? There's a similar operation around here also for managing users and bulk upload, again from a self-service perspective. Not really the point here. So this is kind of really all that you really need to do in terms of being able to set up a service catalog, configure request approvals, so on and so forth. Well, the question that you asked about how to define those AD groups for those authentications, I will get some detailed information together for you, and we will cover that on the next call before we start that main topic. Right? I know that question comes up with quite a few people, and let's just cover it in some proper detail. Okay. If there's any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. If not, this is all we had planned for a call today, and we can connect next week. Thanks very much, everybody, for your time.